All right, I'm going to look at Genesis chapter 44 tonight. So you can be making your way over there in your Bibles if you're not already there. Studying the story of Joseph. Last week when we left off, we were, I guess chapter 43 ends with Joseph's brothers eating at his house. He hasn't revealed himself to them yet, but they're having a pretty good time. The Bible says they were happy and they were rejoicing. So let's start with question number 1 here on our handout, kind of a think about it deal here tonight. I'm going to put these brothers in a difficult situation, and I've never been, I don't think, in this situation before, but it is kind of food for thought. And that question is this: what would you do if you were accused of a crime of which you were innocent?
Forgive. Honest jury.
Okay. Hope for an honest jury. What if all the evidence was stacked against you, but you knew you were innocent?
I think that would break my heart.
It'd be pretty hard, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do a lot of praying.
A lot of praying. That would be a good solution, right? One of the things that I've mentioned before, I like to watch a lot of these crime shows for some reason. I don't know why, but sometimes they have all this evidence against the person. They take them in, and they say this is the crime that we think you've committed, and the people don't really react in any way. Authorities say that's kind of a red flag. If a person is innocent, they're going to stand up for themselves, or they're going to do the very best that they can to try to convince somebody that they didn't do it. And I think that's probably what all of us would do. I think we would be passionate in proclaiming the fact that we are innocent, and we'd probably do everything that we possibly could to prove that we're not guilty of committing that crime. I imagine none of us would be opposed to making some pretty hefty oaths and things like that. But we would probably just do everything that we could to make sure that people knew that we were innocent. And that's really the situation here that Joseph's brothers are going to find themselves in. And we'll talk a little bit about how they reacted when they were put in that situation. All right, so as we mentioned, question number 2 here, we ended chapter 43 with them eating a hefty meal at Joseph's house. And the next day they get up to return, and of course, they brought their sacks to be filled with grain. So question number 2 here, what was put into each brother's sack? Yeah, remember the first time they came down to Egypt, whenever their sacks were filled with grain, Joseph told his servants to put their money back in the mouths of their grain sacks. Evidently, sometime down the road, one of them looks into their sack and discovers that their money purse is still there. The money they were supposed to use to pay for all that grain was still there. Then eventually, when they all get home and they empty out the grain, all of them discover that their money had been put back within their sack. And so this is the second time where Joseph tells his servants to do the same thing. Put all their money back in their grain sacks. You think about the attitude of Joseph's brothers. Like I said, when they left his house, how do you think they were feeling? I think they were feeling ecstatic, don't you? I mean, they had done everything that they set out to accomplish to do. And remember what we talked about last week, 3 major problems that they were facing. The first one was solving the dilemma of their money being in their sacks, and that proved not to be any big deal. The second one was securing Simeon's release. Remember, Joseph held Simeon as captive until they returned back with Benjamin, so that was accomplished. Then the third main thing was they wanted to keep Benjamin safe, and he was safe with them. Then you take into account the fact that they had all this grain, and they were headed home. I think think they just had to be ecstatic, you know, that all these things had, as they thought, had worked out in their favor.
Any idea about what the time frame was from when the first time they came down to the second?
No, I don't think there's any indication in the first, do you?
You couldn't carry that much grain on a donkey.
Yeah,
You know, there was what, there were 70 of them when they came down, finally came down.
yeah,
If you've got a few donkeys, you're not going to carry that much grain to feed. And it was what a 300, 400 mile trip.
yeah, 250, 300 miles, you're talking about somewhere in that area. And, we do know at this time though, I think we'll discover when we get into the next chapter, that this is the end of the second year of the famine. So we do know the time frame of the second time they come, but I don't think there's anything to indicate the timing of their first trip into Egypt. So these guys, again, you know, they had to feel like this was a happy day, but Joseph had one more test, right? He had one more test that would help reveal who these guys had become and if they had changed any. And so that's part of the reason that he puts the money back in their sacks. All right, number 3 here. What additional item was put into Benjamin's sack? Not only did Benjamin get his money back, but what else was put in there? Yeah, Joseph's silver cup. And I want you to stop for a minute, and we kind of, you know, I think several people have kind of asked through this process, why did Joseph do all these things that he's doing? Right? So why did he put his cup or have his cup put in Benjamin's sack?
I think the goal was to get his dad there. See if find out. That's what's going to get dad there.
Okay. One of the great purposes, I agree, one of the great purposes that he was trying to accomplish was he had to figure out how he was going to get his father to move to Egypt. And I think that he knew his father well enough that he thought this is not going to be an easy thing to accomplish. Any other reason? Why Benjamin though? Why not somebody else?
His father didn't want him going down to start with, and if he locked him up and kept him, then the father would go in himself.
Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of, we've talked about this several times, but did he go to Egypt for Simeon?
Yes.
No, he didn't, did he? But I think Joseph he probably knew if Benjamin's down here, he's going to come.
Yeah.
You know, there's probably no doubt in his mind. Why the money? Why put the money in their sacks? If all he was trying to do was get Benjamin back down there.
Well, did they want to make things right? In a sense, what was fair?
Okay. They've already proven themselves once, though, haven't they? They've already passed this test once. You know, I think about it. Joseph was a pretty smart guy. I mean, you think about everything that he did, there was a purpose and a reason for doing it. Now, he did, no doubt, he did care for his family. And again, I think when we get toward the next chapter, probably we'll find out a little bit more about it. But he really did want to do everything within his power to help his family, didn't he? He loved and cared for them. And so I think part of the reason that he gave that money back is so they wouldn't fall in hardships, you know, that they'd have it to spend. But I also think this, Joseph he had more than just a generous motive in mind, because it was part of his test. So he knew that he could get Benjamin, but he was really trying, again, I think he was trying to figure out, have these guys changed it? You know, are they still the same rowdy, wicked bunch of boys that we were whenever we grew up? You know, do they care about anybody but themselves? And, you know, if I do reveal myself to them, what are their feelings going to be? But he knew that he could bring Benjamin back, but I think he wanted to see what kind of reaction the brothers would have. And so he kind of leaves the door open here, because if they choose to abandon Benjamin and go back, he can say, well, you guys stole from me too, right? Your money's in your sack. And so he could bring them all back, and, you know, that could give him some more time and opportunity, I think, to work with them a little bit more. But on the other hand, if they did stand up for Benjamin, and they did do everything within their power, there wasn't any need to bring up the money, right? And that's kind of the story that we get into, because do you ever hear any more about the money? No. Wasn't any big deal, even though Joseph's servant takes their sacks down and searches them and sees the money. Doesn't even make any mention of that. But the main point, again, was, I think, to test the brothers, you know, do everything within his power to make sure he could get his father down there, but at the same time to test his brothers and see what kind of people they had become, if they changed any. So question number 4 here. How long did Joseph wait before sending his steward after them?
Till the sun was up midway.
Yeah, how far did they get?
I gotta be honest.
Just outside of the city, right? Why do you think Joseph was so urgent to catch up with them?
They didn't want them to get too far before he brought one of them back.
Yeah, I think again, you think Joseph's a pretty smart guy here, right? They had proven themselves to be honest individuals. So I think he knows, hey, if there's a possibility they find out this cup is in his sack, they're going to come back and give it to me and say, hey, look, this is the weirdest thing again, but hey, we found your cup in our sack. And so that kind of take away the opportunity, you know, to lay the guilt on them and, you know, openly try them or bring them back. The second thing is this too. There's always the possibility that if they discovered it, they could sell it. You get rid of it. Throw it by the side of the road. You know, and then if you catch up and you want to execute your plan, they don't have your cup. How are you going to do that? It'll be pretty difficult to do, isn't it? So Joseph gave his brothers just long enough to get outside the city, and then he sent his servant after them. Here's something to think about. Question number 5. What was so special about the cup that was put into Benjamin's sack?
It was silver, his personal cup.
It was silver. It was Joseph's personal cup. Anything else that made it special?
Well, mine says they had used it to be for divining or foretell the future or something like that.
Yeah. So kind of interesting, just historical side note, I guess you could say here. But when you study the custom of the Egyptians, it was very common for them to use a cup to try to tell the future. That was what their diviners or their magicians or whatever, that was their means or the method that they often used to be able to communicate with divine beings. And so, according to the Egyptian custom, this would have made sense. Doesn't make much sense to us today, God talking to you through a cup, but that was their kind of custom and their belief. But let me ask you this question. Did Joseph practice divination?
So he certainly interpreted dreams.
Well, he did, didn't he? I mean, did he communicate? Did God communicate with him? How did he do it?
Through dreams, visions.
Through the king's dream.
How did he learn the interpretation, though?
It was from God.
God told him, right?
Right.
How?
In a dream.
In a dream?
Yeah.
I don't think it says specifically, does it?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It could be a possibility that that's the way God communicated with him. But, as far as practicing divination, that's something that Joseph wouldn't have done.
Had 7 fat cattle and 7 lean cattle.
Yeah. But God did communicate to him in some form or fashion, didn't he? But it is kind of interesting that he brings up this is my master's cup of divination. So that made it even more valuable. That, the fact that it was silver, that made it very valuable in and of itself. The fact that it belonged to Joseph, and then the fact that it was looked at as basically a religious article would have added to the value and the importance of it too. So question number 6 here: how did the brothers react to the accusation that they had stolen Joseph's cup? Joseph's servant catches up with them, and he basically accuses them of stealing his master's cup. How did they react when they were accused of that?
Tore their clothes. They tore their clothes.
Okay, that's the ending, right? But initially, before the cup is even discovered, right? This is just an accusation.
They're pretty confident they don't have it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, wouldn't you be?
Joseph would do.
Yeah. If we were in their shoes, and it probably had to be a surprise to see Joseph's servant coming after him, but when he catches up with him and he says, why have you returned evil when my master did you what was good? And they said, well, what in the world are you talking about? We haven't done anything evil to your master. And then he says, well, you took his silver cup, his cup that he drinks out of and his cup that he divines with, you stole it. And of course, they knew they hadn't stolen it, right? They weren't guilty of what they'd been accused of. And so one of the things that they say, if you read through their reply a little bit, they basically make the case, we're not thieves, right? What'd they do with the money that was in their sacks the first time? Brought it back, right? They said, hey, this money showed up in our sacks. We don't know how it happened, but we brought additional money, to pay for the grain that we're going to get now. We're not trying to steal anything from you. We've been open and we've been honest with you in our dealings from the beginning. When Joseph accused them of being spies and asked about their family, what did they say? Told him the truth, right? And so basically they're making their plea. We've been nothing but straightforward. We've been nothing but honest. We're not trying to steal anything from you or take advantage of you in any way. We want to pay for this grain that we purchased. And so to come over here and accuse us of stealing this cup, especially after how Joseph had treated him, right? Brought him into his own house, fed him a good meal, let him stay overnight with him. And so they were really offended that they would even be accused of something like that. Can you kind of put yourself in their shoes? I mean, how would you react if somebody came up to you and said, well, I know you stole my car. We know we didn't steal their car, right? And we haven't stolen anything from you. If you want to look around, go ahead, right? Look in our garage. Search our property. Go through our house. You'll not find keys to it. You'll not find even a hint of anything that were associated with this crime that we're accused of. And that was basically their attitude, wasn't it? They were just so adamant and so confident that there was nothing that was going to convict them of being guilty of this crime, that they put their lives on the line, like Lance said. So question number 7 here, what proposal specifically did the brothers make to Joseph's house servant?
We'll be your slaves, and if you find anything,
Okay.
and whoever is found, let him die.
Yeah. I mean, that's how confident they were, right? They said, you find the cup with any of us, the guy you find it with is dead. And not only is he going to be dead, but all of us will come back and be your servants if you find that cup here.
Well, this is the second time they found something in the bag wasn't supposed to be in there.
Yeah, but I don't think, again, they hadn't gotten far enough into the journey that they even knew.
That's one of the reasons you want to get them before they had their first guy's camp, they would like,
There you go. I think after the last trip, that'd be the first thing I'd do, don't you? I think I'd look before I left the city. Yeah, but they didn't even know their money was there yet again, did they?
you know,
They hadn't had time to take it down or look through any of it. And, I mean, really, there wasn't any reason for them to suspect their money would be there. They probably thought, well, it's just oversight, you know, in the beginning. Surely it's not going to happen again. But they were so sure of their innocence that they boldly offered up the life, any one of their lives, if they were guilty of taking it. And then not only that, they also pledged that, you know, we'll all become your servants if you find the cup with any of us. So what reply does Joseph's servant give to the brothers? Question number 8 here on your handout. Yeah, they went through a process, didn't they, in searching them. But before they even go through that process, what counteroffer does his servant give to him?
the only one that found the cup in is going to be the slave.
Yeah, basically he said, no, you know, death is too harsh, but I will take you up on your second offer there, and that is, you know, whoever, if one of you guys are found with this cup, then you will become Joseph's slave. And again, the test was this: would they think about this? Okay, did any of them have any inkling or suspect that one of their siblings had stolen this? No. I mean, if they doubted any of their siblings or their character, they wouldn't have made the statement that they made, right? Because in the back of their mind, you might be thinking, I don't know about him. There's a possibility that he might steal it. But they were pretty confident that none of them had taken it. And so the test becomes this, you know, are they willing, when one of them turns up guilty, are they willing to let him go back to Egypt and become a slave, even though they know that he's innocent? Right? No doubt in their minds. None of them took it. So would they let an innocent guy go back and suffer their own flesh and blood? Would they let him kind of bear the guilt alone? Or would they stand by him? Would they do all that they could to rescue him, to save him? Or, again, would they willingly throw one of their brothers under the bus to save their own skins? Say, well, we got home free, too bad for him, right? How were their feelings toward one another? Denzel mentioned this, question 9, in what order did the steward search the brother's sack? Well, again, it started with the oldest, didn't it? And ended up with the youngest, which was Benjamin. And even though they knew that they were innocent, don't you think every time one brother was declared innocent, there was kind of a sigh of relief? It's kind of like if you're accused of a crime and you know you're innocent. It's not until they say, you're not guilty, that you can kind of breathe and say, okay, we're home free. But I imagine each brother search that was conducted, a little bit of weight was lifted off their shoulders whenever they figured out that they weren't going to find the cup there. The problem was the person with whom the cup was found. Of all those brothers that could have had that cup, that was the worst case scenario for them in their minds, wasn't it? And you even read about, when the servant wants to search their belongings, how do they take down the sacks for him to search? Did you catch that there?
Quickly.
Yeah. They're like, here you go. Look at it. Look in this one. Look in that one. Look over here. That, again, it just shows that they were eager to prove their innocence, weren't But of course, we know how the story ends, but it does end up with Benjamin. So question number 10 here, how did the brothers react whenever the cup was found in Benjamin's sack?
They all go back.
Yeah. Do you think that was a shock? Man, again, think about the way that they left. They were on an all-time high. You know, everything was going great. It worked out perfectly. And in a moment of time, I mean, the worst case scenario has come to pass. And they just had to be shaken. One thing that they did do was tear their clothes. Why'd they tear their clothes?
Show remorse.
Yeah, that's a sign of grief, mourning, you know, turmoil, something tragic has happened to you. Pretty common custom in that day and age in the Middle East. So it showed that they genuinely cared. You know, they were disturbed, the fact that the cup had been found in Benjamin's sack. So again, how are they going to react? Are they going to allow Benjamin to be taken without putting up a fight? Go stand up for him? Are they going to plead for him? You know, what are they going to do? How are they going to react to this? Question number 11 here. This is, again, kind of an interesting side note, but what supernatural ability did Joseph claim to have?
He could interpret the dreams.
Divination.
Okay? He did interpret dreams, but what specifically did he say here? What's verse 15 say?
Do you practice divination?
I've read
Yeah. He said, don't you know that a person like me can communicate with divine beings? Now, that's kind of interesting because it's obvious at this point in time that, well, Joseph knew who had the cup because he was the one who had it placed in the sack of Benjamin. But it also would kind of create a situation because it would prove that he didn't need the cup to figure out who had it, right? So if the brothers had a little bit of common sense, they might say, hey, there's something going on here. But he did, of course, say, you know, don't you know that I have the ability to communicate with divine beings? I know that you took my cup. But again, it was part of the ploy that Joseph was using here. Question number 12 here. So what did Judah say to Joseph when they were brought to him? Brothers go back with him, load everything up, take everything back.
He said, we will be your slave.
Yeah. Judah knew, you know, he just was as honest and straightforward as he could be with Joseph. And basically he said, you know, I don't have the words that are going to prove our innocence. You know, there's nothing I can say that's going to prove to you that we're innocent of this charge. There's no way that I can explain or justify to you why that cup's there, you know, why you found what you did. But he also made a pretty important statement there. He says, God has found us out. And what do you think he was talking about there?
Well, the first time they thought they did thanks because of what they did to Joseph. So,
Yeah. He didn't say God has found Benjamin's iniquity out, right? He said God has found our iniquities out. And so he's thinking about this idea, once again, we're getting punished for what we did to Joseph. You know, that was on their mind, wasn't it? First time they went into Egypt, it was on their mind. So again, it's kind of the idea, they hadn't forgot what they had done. They have remorse, regret for it, absolutely. And basically they thought God's brought us back here to punish us for what we had done wrong. So Judah's kind of the ringleader here. He's the one who incidentally, he guaranteed, remember last week, he guaranteed Jacob that Benjamin would come back home, didn't he? And so he's feeling the weight of responsibility here about these things that are happening. Question 13 here, what does Joseph say to Judah's proposal that they would all become his slaves? Judah says, you know what? We're all into this together. Right? Don't just take Benjamin, take us all. And we're all going to become your slaves. So how did Joseph react to that?
You tried to give them another opportunity to sell Benjamin out again.
Yeah.
See if they would.
Yeah, he tried to pass himself off. You know, I'm not an unreasonable guy. My quarrel is not with all of you. My quarrel is with the guy who's guilty, the guy who took my cup. And so the innocent shouldn't have to suffer because of the guilty. Benjamin was the guilty one. The rest of you guys are free to go back. You can go back to your father, go back home, you can go back to your families. Only person that really needs to stay here is Benjamin. Which brother, 14, which brother asked Joseph to let him be the slave instead of Benjamin? Yeah. When the proposal for all of them to stay together didn't work, Judah said, well, let me offer this up to you. Okay, let me, bottom line was, he said, let me take his place. He kind of gave him some reasons why that was the situation there, why he was willing to do that. But I think we talked about last week, what was the significance of Judah?
And forefather of Jesus.
Yeah. Judah was a very powerful tribe. And whenever the brothers sold Joseph into slavery, do you remember what part Judah played?
Judah was the one that suggested the selling.
Yeah. He was the guy who brought up selling Joseph. You know, now you might look at that and say, well, that's kind of the lesser of two evils because they were going to kill him, right? So he kind of saved Joseph because he sold him into slavery. They didn't bring up setting him free, did he? But this was the guy who was guilty of wanting to sell Joseph and actually selling Joseph into the hands of those Midianites. So Judah is the one who's standing up now for Benjamin, and he's the one who's willing to take his place. So what do you think that shows you about Judah?
Like, he at least got a little more character than he had.
Yeah, I mean, it shows he's changed, hasn't it? Doesn't it? He's a godly man. He's a man of compassion. You know, he's talking about all the things that will happen if Benjamin is made to stay there. He's a responsible person. You know, he was the one who gave the guarantee, so it felt like he had to do something about it.
I think he did what he did to his dad. He loved
Yeah.
his dad and he wanted to save him from that.
Yeah.
So he was willing to, he wouldn't bother his dad that much if he's dead.
Or Simeon, right?
If Benjamin's going to be kept, that would be a problem.
Yeah, and you know that's really question 15. That's really what he tells Joseph, is because he says, "Listen, if we go back without Benjamin, it'll kill Dad. You know, he's already lost one of his favorite sons. If he loses another one, he'd just go give up and die." And I can't bear to see that. Was basically what Judah was saying there. But you know, he did make great intercession, and he voluntarily sacrificed himself for the good of other people. And so it shows you a little bit again about how much he had changed. What did Joseph, question 16 here, what do you think Joseph learned about his brothers from all these experiences, these interactions that he's had with them so far?
They have totally changed the way they were. They were greedy all about themselves. Now they were concerned about somebody besides themselves.
Yeah. And you know, they were not trying to excuse all the things that they did, but they were young men learning how to grow up at the same time when a lot of these things happened. But you know, they'd openly showed remorse and regret for what they'd done to Joseph. You know, they thought about it constantly. You think about, were they God-fearing men?
I think so.
Were they thinking about the punishment of God?
Sure.
Yeah, they said, this is what we deserve, right? God's bringing this punishment upon us. They had proven their word. You know, they were trustworthy individuals. They were honest people. They told the truth. They brought back the money that was sent with them the first time. Did they love and care for each other? Absolutely did. They'd come back. They wanted Simeon, right? That was part of their goal. They wanted Simeon set free. They were willing to protect Benjamin. Did they care for their father? Sure did. Yeah. And the fifth thing that I have here is, remember at that meal, were they jealous or envious when Benjamin got 5 times as much as everybody else? No, they learned not to be jealous or envious of one another, but to rejoice whenever somebody got more than what they did. And so they had changed a lot. And again, you kind of ask, why did Joseph go through all this? I think that's part of the purpose here. He's trying to figure out what kind of people are these. You know, if I tell them who I am, are they going to be happy? They going to be mad? They going to try to kill me again? You know, how are they going to react? And so Joseph was a pretty sharp dude, though. All right, anybody got any thoughts, comments, questions before we end tonight?